Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the PurpleDon Enlightenment Hour. I am Morgan, the PurpleDon, whatever the hell you want to call me today. And in this episode, I'm going to take a little bit of time just to talk about Thor Ragnarok, the latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know America doesn't get this film until I believe next Friday, which is unfortunate for the US. I think we here got it this past Tuesday. In fact, it's all very weird. I often talk about how strange I think release dates in the MCU are, considering that here in the UK we seem to get them a lot earlier than the US. I'm not entirely sure why, but it always seems to happen, and it happened again with Ragnarok. But, yes, so, I am going to start off in full non-spoiler territory, so everyone's safe up until I shout the word spoilers at some point halfway through this, and then we'll get into spoiler territory for those who have seen Ragnarok. But, starting off with non-spoilers, obviously this is the third standalone Thor film, and you're listening to someone now that has not seen Thor 1 or Thor The Dark World. I'm still lacking on my completion of watching all of the MCU films, mainly because some of them really don't appeal to me. I am someone who likes my MCU films on the to feel different. That's why I always say that Ant-Man is my favourite of them all, because it feels like the most different. It's the smallest, pun completely intended. It's the smallest in scale, and I like that one above all others, really. And I'd have to say, after watching Ragnarok, it goes right up there with my favourite MCU films that I've watched. Like I said, I'm not an MCU. I've not seen all of the MCU films, and I know that might shock many people, but it's true. I haven't seen quite a few of them, to be honest with you. But no, Ragnarok certainly goes right up there for me, and it is mainly due to the fact that if anything, it feels like a comedy. And with my love of Taika Waititi, that many people who listen to this will be fully aware of my love of Taika, and there's a lot of Taika in Ragnarok, and I think some people, I can see why some of the hardcore MCU fans would be not necessarily put off, but I don't know how to word it. Maybe sort of, I can see why some of the hardcore MCU fans wouldn't like the style of Ragnarok as much as I maybe did, because obviously they're used to the more sort of not necessarily serious, but to use a slightly negative word, formulaic superhero movies. Like, I don't know, Captain America the first Avenger. But Ragnarok just has this bizarre style to it. As most people would know from watching the trailers, you could tell from them, but it really goes all out with the wackiness, and there is a lot of Taika Waititi in there, and it's very clear to see even some specific shots and the way some scenes play out. It's very similar to scenes in Hunt for the Wilder People or What We Do in the Shadows or things like that. That just styled in a way that makes me laugh, rather than what is actually happening or what is actually being said. It's weird because it's the way scenes are put together, or the way certain scenes are put together, makes me laugh, because it's just like, oh, that's so Taika. That's so Taika. And for me, that's just a huge positive for Ragnarok. I know that Taika also said he wanted to make this more of a comedy, obviously being, primarily a funny director, because of Chris Hemsworth's comedic ability that rarely gets shown. And I've got to say, I completely understand that, because Chris Hemsworth is legitimately funny. He's very funny in Ragnarok. So is everyone, to be fair. Well, maybe not everyone. Maybe not Cate Blanchett as Hela, but she's not supposed to be funny. But Chris Hemsworth, I'm glad he's had this chance now to showcase a bit of comedic talent that he does have, because I'd like to see him do more funnier stuff after watching Ragnarok, because he works really well doing that. Obviously, we know the basic plot of Ragnarok is Thor and Hulk imprisoned on the planet Sakaar, and they have to get back to, or Thor at least has to get back to Asgard to stop Hela from taking over and all that business. Hela, played by Cate Blanchett. I will say this before we get into some sort of spoiler territory. Hela is through no fault of Cate Blanchett at all. I think Cate Blanchett is great with what she was given. Hela is just another example of a somewhat disappointing MCU villain. I don't think she's particularly memorable, despite Cate Blanchett's perfectly worthwhile performance. It just seems like, again, she's just there to act. She's just there to act as a villain, and she's got an interesting backstory, being that, she was, or she is, Odin's firstborn child, and therefore Thor and Loki's older sister that they didn't know about. Well, yeah, technically Loki's, I suppose, with the whole adoption process. But she's back in Asgard and she wants to take over. It's another one of those type of villains that has got a really cool design, to be fair. I really like the whole antlers. It's not really antlers, but whatever it is, helmet. I don't pretend to know a lot about Thor, okay? I'll call them antlers, because they look like antlers. But yeah, I like how she's designed. I like some of the fights with her that are in the film. But, she's not a villain that particularly stands out for me. Which is a shame, being that she's actually the first female villain in an MCU film, I believe. Let me think if that is actually correct. Yeah, I think it is. I think she is the first or out and out villain that is female in the MCU. So that's interesting. That's a good thing to see, certainly. But again, with the MCU, well, Kevin Feige himself always says that the MCU is there to focus on its heroes, and that's what it does really well. That is why it's so successful, because it does portray its heroes very, very well, to the oftentimes, and then it ends up with somewhat less than satisfying villains, which is a shame. I think Mark Ruffalo is great in this, again, as Hulk. And I know that he actually did everything for Hulk, from just being Bruce Banner to being in the mocap suit for the Hulk to even Hulk's voice he did in Ragnarok. And Mark Ruffalo, I like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. I like him a lot. I especially like him in Ragnarok, though. I think he's developing as a character, and I know I heard I can't remember who said it. Might have been Kevin Feige again, that they're creating this sort of story arc with Hulk within 3 different MCU films, starting with Ragnarok. I think probably the Infinity War and Avengers 4 will be the other 2. But they're creating this 3-film long story arc with Hulk purely because they don't want to make a Hulk standalone film again, because then Universal gets some sort of profit from it. So they're being very clever by basically putting a Hulk film within 3 films. And I can see it's clear that they do seem to be developing Hulk as a character in the whole universe. I think Ragnarok is the Hulk's best outing in the MCU. And, well, again, that's coming from someone who hasn't even seen Edward Norton's The Incredible Hulk. But I'm led to believe it's not great. I've seen every Mark Ruffalo portrayed Hulk movie. And this is, I think, his best outing as that. You've also got Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, who was really strong, actually. Maybe the strongest character in the film entirely, I think. Certainly, I think the most layered and really, really interesting. Again, I know absolutely nothing about this character, but she really interested me. I'd very much like to see her return. I think she will return. Granted, in probably some sort of small part in Infinity War or whatever, because there's going to be 48,000 characters in Infinity War next May, June? When does Infinity War come out? June? May, April? I don't know when Infinity War comes out, sometime around then. But it's six-ish months away. Which is exciting, even for me, a non-hardcore MCU fan. It's very exciting. But let's not forget about Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster, who I'm led to believe is the brother of the Collector from Guardians of the Galaxy, Benicio del Toro, which is interesting. I think the Grandmaster is certainly the wackier of the two characters, and Goldblum's just endlessly entertaining. He just oozes charisma. And I could have watched scenes with the Grandmaster all day. Some of the funniest stuff in Ragnarok is with the Grandmaster, or is in scenes with the Grandmaster. This isn't a spoiler, but I do want to just mention this now before we do get into spoiler territory and people that haven't seen Ragnarok yet miss this. There is a scene when Thor is meeting the Grandmaster for the first time, and Thor is taken on this sort of introduction journey through this tunnel, as like, you are now about to meet the Grandmaster, and Thor's just like, what's going on? It's very funny, made even funnier the fact that in the background, or in the soundtrack I should say, is that song from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Pure Imagination. It's just hilarious. It's as though the Grandmaster has set up the song Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory to just play to everyone who is introduced to him as they take this little journey through this tunnel before they meet him. It's really funny. It is such a funny film. I've not laughed in a superhero film this much easily since Deadpool, and I'd not laughed in a superhero film before Deadpool, or as much as I did in Deadpool in maybe ever. So Thor Ragnarok, the top 2 funniest superhero films of all time. I'm pretty confident in saying that one. Yeah. What else is there to say? Loki's back. Obviously, you can't have Thor without Loki. But Loki's kind of, not as much of a villain anymore. He's alright these days, he's Loki. He's on Team Thor. Really, throughout the film. And then you've got Karl Urban as Scourge, who acts as basically Hela's right-hand man. It was pretty decent, to be honest. I like Karl Urban. Scourge is again, having absolutely no comics context whatsoever. Scourge seems like an interesting character. I don't know how prevalent he is in the comics. I've got absolutely no idea. But I think I'm going to wind up the non-spoilery section of this episode roundabout now. Like I said, Ragnarok is hilarious. It's so much fun. It is certainly up there with my favourite MCU films. Purely because it just takes this. I've never quite seen a superhero film like it. It feels so different, and I love that about it. It's the wackiness and humour of something like Guardians of the Galaxy taken up times 100. Just to this absolute next level of insanity and bizarreness, and genuinely non-stop laughs, really. Even when it gets somewhat serious, you're still laughing. And some people don't like that. I know that some people don't like that. I've seen complaints by a couple of people that are like, Ragnarok was too funny for the serious moments to be taken seriously. I mean, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I don't personally agree, purely because I just watch it to have a bit of fun. But I understand why people would think that. But I don't think that's what Ragnarok was going for. I don't think that was what anyone at Marvel Studios was going for, and I don't think that was what Taika Waititi was going for. I think he was just going for this bizarre, fun time that, yes, does have, things in it that will have consequences and will have repercussions in Infinity War and going forward and all that business. But it's primarily a comedy. It really, really is, and that is why I really, really did enjoy it as much as I did. But now, 20 minutes into this episode, we're going to take a bit of time now to talk a couple of spoilers. I'm not going to go too deep, just because I don't want to, and I might end up being here for longer than I want to be, talking about everything that happened. This is not a breakdown of Thor Ragnarok. This is not a review of Thor Ragnarok. This is just me spurting out some thoughts, because that's what I like to do. But yes, as of the end of this little speech, spoilers ahead. Do not listen to the rest of this if you have not watched Thor Ragnarok, because I don't want to be that guy who spoils things for you. But you have now been warned, and we're getting into spoilers. So, there's no more Asgard. That gets destroyed eventually by Surtur, the big fire demon thing, who I thought was very cool. So Hela didn't really do anything other than inconvenience people. Well, I say she didn't really do anything. She prompted the destruction of Asgard, but it was in the end a reborn Surtur who destroyed the Norse homeworld, or whatever you call it, the Norse god's homeworld. But everyone's fine, apart from Odin. Odin's not fine. Odin's dead. No more Anthony Hopkins in the MCU. But again, like I said earlier, you're listening to someone who has never seen Thor or Thor: The Dark World. So I really don't have a great deal of connection to Anthony Hopkins' Odin. Maybe his death means more to other people. I would expect it to, but I'm sort of indifferent towards it, and I know that is completely my bad for not having watched the other two, but okay. But yeah, and then in the end, like I said, I don't want to go on too long about this, but obviously you've got at the end Thor, Loki, Hulk, Valkyrie. Was Scourge there? No, Scourge wasn't there, was he? Scourge sacrificed himself. We've got Korg there, who I should have said this in the non-spoiler bit now, but I haven't, and okay. Korg, of course, the big rock monster, voiced by Taika himself, that I just, oh god, it was so funny. When I realised it was Taika voicing him, I audibly laughed loudly in the cinema, and I do not often do that, but it was just so funny to me. But he's there as well, and I really want to see more of him. Not that I think we're gonna get any more of him, but I really did like him. So he's there as well, and all on this ship, of course, that was stolen from the Grandmaster on Sakaar. And they all leave Asgard to be destroyed by fire, by Surtur's fire. Of course, watching the mid credits and the post credits sequences as well, we see that what I believe is Thanos' ship, or what I've read that was Thanos' ship. The power party of heroes happens upon that, an obvious just setup for Infinity War, as you would expect there to be in the post or in the mid credits and post credit scenes for this. The post credit scene takes us back to the Grandmaster after the revolution takes place on Sakaar, and the Grandmaster. Sadly, I do not think the Grandmaster is long for the world. I don't think we'll see the Grandmaster again in the MCU, and that kind of saddens me, because I'd really like to see him again. I'd like to see him and his brother, the Collector, have some sort of conversation. I don't know how that would possibly work, and I really don't think it is going to now, given the post-credit scene, and it looks like he's liable to be kept prisoner, if not eaten by people. But I'd love to see something like that. I really, really would. What else? What else? Spoiler territory. Things do we have to discuss that are interesting and have repercussions? I did find it interesting that Hulk had been Hulk since Age of Ultron. Like, because I don't know that I don't know whether that was just a known thing going into Ragnarok, that he hadn't been Bruce Banner in 2 years. I don't keep so up to date on MCU continuity that I know that. But I found it interesting that he hadn't been Bruce Banner since Age of Ultron, and and that's why I thought that Mark Ruffalo gave his best Hulk performance here. Not only because I feel like he had more to do, but because, we saw Bruce Banner just completely out of his depth when he turns back into Banner, of course, on Sakaar, not knowing what's happened in the last 2 years, because he's just been Hulk. And he seems to have this nice little relationship going on with Valkyrie as well, which I hope is a story point in the supposed Hulk arc they're going for. And then, obviously, perhaps the most important spoiler. Oh, actually, I'll talk about this. Doctor Strange shows up, doesn't he? I'm not sure if that even is a spoiler, because for those who watched the post-credits scene in Doctor Strange last year, when he met Thor, it was pretty obvious to me that Doctor Strange was going to be in Thor. Going in. Like, I don't even remember reading anything that's saying, oh yeah, Doctor Strange he's going to be in Thor. He's going to be in Ragnarok. I just sort of expected Doctor Strange to be in there from what happened in the post-credit scene of Doctor Strange. What I didn't expect was him to come so early. Like, Doctor Strange shows up within like the first 20 minutes. Just for like one scene. But it's kind of a fun scene. It's nice to see a bit of crossover It's nice to see a bit of crossover that doesn't feel like it's too much. I think it was done really well. I think the Doctor Strange scene was done really well. It was fun. But what was I talking about? Oh yes, that's what I was talking about. Perhaps the most important spoiler. Again, I'm not even sure this is a spoiler because I'm sure it happened in the trailer. But Thor's got no hammer anymore. He's got no Mjolnir anymore. I don't really know how. Well, maybe with these not new, but his thunder powers that was showcased on that bridge right at the end that I thought was incredibly cool. Maybe they will be Thor's major powers in Infinity War and going forward, rather than the hammer, because he ain't got no hammer anymore. The hammer's gone. I don't know if he's getting some sort of replacement hammer that's just going to act as a hammer and not like a flying thing. But maybe he'll be able to fly anyway by just using the thunder powers. I really don't know. Again, you're listening to someone who knows very, very little about Thor from the comics. I don't know if that's a thing that happens. I really don't. I'm just spurting my thoughts. So I'd be interesting to see Thor going forward. I prefer him with the shorter hair. That's a weird thing to say, because Thor obviously does have the long hair. I don't know. That's a very, very minor point. But if I remember correctly from that big Infinity War mural-style poster that was brought out, I think I remember him still having short hair on that. So maybe Thor does not grow his hair back out. I don't know. Whether that's going to affect anything, I really have no idea. But guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. We've just gone over that half-hour mark. Thank you so much for listening to me talk nonsensically about Thor Ragnarok. Please do let me know what you thought of it on Twitter using the hashtag PDEHour. You can follow me on Twitter at the PurpleDon. If you did enjoy this episode, leave it a rate and review, leave it a like. If you are on YouTube, sub to the channel for a new Enlightenment Hour every single week, and HorrorHouse as well, and some other stuff that occasionally goes on this channel too. But as always, guys, thank you again very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.